So most BPO contracts are still built the same way they were built 20 years ago. How many agents? What's the SLA? What's the price per hour? For companies signing one of those contracts today, what are they missing?
The problem with traditional BPO contracts isn't necessarily just that they're outdated. They're structurally misaligned. Capgemini, I'm sure you read as well, right? Just made that $3.3 billion bet on UNS. The traditional BPO capabilities are no longer enough, and that the market is consolidating fast, quickly around AI capable, outcome oriented platforms. That kind of move doesn't happen unless the pressure is existential, right? The forcing function really is AI, but not necessarily in the way it's always framed. AI isn't just coming in and randomly replacing agents. What it's doing is it's eliminating labor arbitrage as a defensible business. The BPOs that are still competing on a cost per agent hour are really building on a foundation that's actively dissolving underneath them. And that model will constantly be a race to the bottom. When was the last time you heard an executive say, going into this year's budget, I was given more to do more? Every single conversation is, how do you do more with what you have, or how do you do more with less?
Welcome to the Contact Center Gurus, the podcast for contact center and customer experience leaders. Learn best practices, new technology, tips and tricks, and more. Listen in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contact Center Gurus podcast. I'm your host, Darren Prine. I recently published a piece arguing that the BPO industry is at an inflection point. And the companies that don't evolve into what I call managed CX providers, MCXP, my new acronym, face extinction. Today, I'm talking to someone whose company I think is ahead of that curve. My guest is Siddharth Victor, SVP and Head of Support Services at Movate. What makes Sid's perspective different from most people you'll hear in this space is that he didn't arrive here from a strategy deck. He started at Movate as a tech support engineer, spent 23 years building from the inside, and now leads the sales and solutions division for their entire CX and enterprise support business. He's a COPC registered coordinator, a Six Sigma green belt, and someone who has watched this industry's promises about transformation either deliver or fall apart in real time. Sid, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Darren. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. This is going to be a super exciting podcast. I can't wait for people to see it. And what we're talking about is, I say, disruptive. I think this is one of the more disruptive topics in the industry. And it's one where we are a little ahead of the curve, I think, and as is Movate on what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah.
But anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. I've got some questions for you. Hopefully they're good ones. So here we go. So most BPO contracts are still built the same way they were built 20 years ago. How many agents? What's the SLA? What's the price per hour? For companies signing one of those contracts today, what are they missing? What's the opportunity they don't even know they're leaving on the table?
Great question to kick it off, Darren. So let me dive in a little bit here, right? See, the problem with traditional BPO contracts isn't necessarily just that they're outdated. They're structurally misaligned because, like you said, traditional contracts are built with a set of predefined operating frameworks in mind, predefined processes and structures and SLAs in mind. And almost always, they're likely tied to some sort of a fixed cost budget. Some of the more rigid type of contracts or restrictive contracts have things like a per minute pricing, an AHT cap, minimum staffing requirements, penalty clauses, so on and so forth, built on top of it. And underlying, though, for across all of these contractual documents are a client's expectation that everyone across both organizations should be driving a better experience for their customers and also do so in an effective and efficient manner, right? However, if you think about it pragmatically, What the BPO is continually trying to do or thinking about there is how do I make these calls shorter? How do I make them more efficient so I can make the margins I need to make? And faster might not always be better from a customer experience perspective, right? Hence the
Right.
alignment. So while there's nothing truly wrong in the base premise of the model, and I
Mhm.
do believe that all clients are writing all of these contracts with the best intentions to the ability and visibility they have. There's a very limited operating sphere where both the client's priorities and the vendor's priorities overlap, right? So to answer your question, what they're leaving on the table is the opportunity to shift from a pure play cost model, right? And you can structure it any which way per hour, per FTE, per minute, to a value based model that also helps transfer a lot of the ownership and accountability to a partner. At Movate, what we're calling it is moving away from a very fixed, rigid type of model to a more fluid model, right? Away from heavy full-time agent dependencies, high fixed operating cost, and moving more towards a hybrid, integrated, carefully orchestrated model where AI tends to handle the entire transactional layer. On-demand Flex experts handle complex and empathy-intensive interactions. Plus, they're also helping train the AI models on the front end and the back end. And FTEs are reserved for truly elite, high-stakes support. All of this we like to package in a outcome-based commercial model because it's not about staffing. It's about
Mhm.
co-architecting a CX operating model for efficiency, flexibility, and scalability with aligned end objectives. And contracts need to reflect this. If not, the charter is just one sided, right? They need to highlight what the overlapping accountability is and also encourage and incentivize ongoing innovation. Your white paper absolutely nails it, Darren. I found it very, very interesting. The CFO question has changed. It's no longer how cheaply can you staff, it's what is the total cost of the operating model,
Mhm.
including any implications and drag on customer experience. What does rework cost? What does agent churn cost? What does customer churn cost? What does the inability to scale for peak volumes cost? And not all of these necessarily show up on a per seat invoice, but 100% of the time, it affects a P&L. So bottom line, you shouldn't really contract to hire a vendor that sticks to just a predefined set of conditions and then be unhappy or surprised that you didn't get a partner that cares about your business as much as you do and is as vested in your success as you are.
Right. A couple comments on that. One is if I go see a surgeon, and I'm going to see one soon, their solution to everything is surgery. It's kind of like there's this analogy about I don't know, a contractor, somebody, their solution to everything is a hammer. It's same thing with surgeons, same thing with BPOs,
Yeah,
traditional BPOs. Their solution to everything is let's add more agents.
right.
Let's add more agents or let's add better agents. And that's kind of how it's been. And you mentioned that sometimes the outcomes the client is seeking aren't in alignment with the outcomes that the BPO is seeking.
Right.
And in the model that you've just described, it's one where the BPO can actually sit down more as a partner or as a consulting partner with the client and look at what are your objectives? What are your pain points? What's not working?
Right.
Let's run through your data and let's look at what's not working. And then let's partner together to fix that.
Right.
So, and in general, the model that you're describing is one where a BPO can even meet with the client, understand everything about what they're doing and where they want to go,
Boom.
and then can resolve that or produce a solution based on outcomes that the client wants to accomplish, achieve, or improve. And that is revolutionary. That is completely disruptive. So BPO, instead of coming in and saying, well, we need, looks like 10 seats ought to do that, or 20 seats or 100, can say, you know what? What is your cost? Let's look at your data. Let's determine what the cost per resolution is. This
Right.
is just an example,
Mhm.
but let's say the cost of resolution is $12. Um, And then the BPO can actually put together a package incorporating AI, maybe other technologies and agents, where they can come in and say, you're paying $12 an out per resolution now. We can reduce that to 10.
Yeah.
So that completely changes everything, because now what you're offering is a way to actually improve their operations while reducing their costs, not just adding more cost with more agents. Do
Correct.
I have that right?
You nailed it. You nailed it. And I think that really characterizes what an MCXP should be doing and delivering for their customers. Be a consultant, be a partner, align on the outcomes that both of you need to deliver in the best interest of the end customer.
And this is, you said revolutionary, but I stress it again. This is like the biggest positive change for customers in the industry that I've ever seen. So I've only been in the industry since 2009, but since then, I've never seen anything that can be this impactful for clients. So I'm clearly very excited about it. So I'll move on to my next question. So tell me about a client where Movate walked in and started the conversation around outcomes and cost per or even cost per resolution rather than headcount. What did that engagement look like, and what did the numbers show at the end?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I've got several examples, obviously, that I can quote from different clients we engage with today. And while most of our conversations with customers are, here's how you need to be looking at an outsourcing engagement that's truly vested around aligned outcomes, resolution comes up quite a bit. And the example that I love under that overarching umbrella is one I keep coming back to. Right, it's with a global gaming client. They're a household name in interactive entertainment, and we did not just walk into that customer pitching, "How do we get more headcount?" Right? It's, let me get more. I'm doing a certain percentage. I'm doing it really well. I'm outperforming the others. Just give me more headcount, which is very typical of a lot of the conversations that BPOs tend to have with clients in a very constrictive contracting model that we talked about in kind of the first question, right? I honestly still don't handle all of their volume. I'm one amongst three BPOs that manage it. I share volumes with other partners, and I have a seat at the table from a BPO perspective. But I can absolutely say with certainty that I am their most strategic partner. So
Mhm.
before we earned the right to actually ask them for anything at all, we did first, based on the contacts we handled, plus a full outside-in diagnostics of their customer journey, the points of friction, what customers were happy about, what their automated touch points were, where customers were dropping off, et cetera. You know the drill, right? Just a full analysis of what the as-is state was. Then we built on top of it to create what a full ideal state customer journey point of view with very specific use cases that should be automated. What types of contacts should be handled by our flexible workforce? What type of contacts should be handled by a BPO? Where you can bring in productivity improvements? What does seasonal ramps need to look like? The whole shebang. We then showed them how we could actually operationalize this blueprint in a fully outcome based model on a cost per resolution. And while doing it, lower their overall cost of ownership, drive up a better customer experience, and create less points of friction across several different areas in that customer journey. This was, as you can imagine, more than enough to get their attention and convince
Mhm.
two things, right? One is, they knew we were the real deal. We knew what we were talking about. We had done all of the due diligence, which is very important to establish credibility and earn a seat at that table. And two, that it was then worth them investing their time, which is the hardest commodity to get, to explore this further.
Mhm.
In that conversation, we established that we weren't just another BPO, but to your point and to your white paper, a
Mhm.
managed customer experience provider. Now,
Right.
once that was established, they know we're the right people, this is the right thing to do. They allocated teams to work with us so that we could get all of the data needed, the actual data to map their contact patterns, volume spikes, where resolution was breaking down, true cost per interactions on actual spend data, right? Now, this discovery phase tends to be almost undermined by both the BPOs as well as the clients all the time, but it's where
Mhm.
the real value conversation starts to begin, right? And now we also, once we determined all of it, we gave them the use case, we gave them the business case for TCO reduction, how much we would be able to reduce the true cost of resolution from where it is today to where it could potentially go. We started out with one very specific use case, right? So we built the BPO structure, the flexible workforce, and the use case that we picked was a gift card and code redemption gift case. Uh, Both parties thought it was a huge area of opportunity, primarily because the data said so. Agents were manually juggling multiple systems, handling distorted images, managing a lot of token validation, going and having to do a lot of manual steps before the final resolution was provided, which is what the due diligence revealed, right? So the fix here wasn't really let's throw more agents at it, or to your point, better qualified agents at it to get this done faster. It was a ground up redesign of that whole interaction model with an agentic AI solution, and it was critically structured around the outcome based commercial model per resolved contact, not per agent. Now, this alignment meant we had as much skin in the game as they did. The before and after was stark. Average handling time went down from 12 and a half minutes to 2.5 minutes, so about 80% faster. Cost per resolved interaction fell by 66.5%. And the
Wow.
autonomous resolution, where we started out at 6%, over time progressively has increased to 86% fully autonomous resolution. The client scaled through their peak volume, handled everything without a proportional increase in headcount, turned what potentially could be very frustrating moments in support as an opportunity to build brand loyalty with that customer. We've since then scaled across several use cases, both on the front end and ones on the back end, that drive better agent productivity. And it's because of all of these outcomes and the strategic intent in how we're aligned on these outcomes that I said earlier, that we might not be the only BPO partner, but we absolutely are the most strategic. And that's exactly what your white paper talks about as well, right? You're selling results, not time. And that's the shift that the industry is experiencing. And this engagement is a live example of what that looks like in practice, Darren.
That is incredible and impressive. And gosh, it's mind blowing when you described that initially. When you or someone from your team brought this up to whoever they were speaking with on the client side, they must have had to repeat it multiple times because it must have blown their minds. And to try to get them to, they're expecting from a BPO what they've expected for 30 years. And now you're proposing this model. Uh, I mean, how did they even respond? It must have just been crazy in their heads when they heard about it.
It did. So they were really, really intrigued, right?
Mhm.
We had their attention with what that art of possible picture looked like, what we had drawn for them. But what truly blew their minds was when we were able to get the data from their team, use their actual data, represent it differently, showed them all the underlying aspects that they're not considering in what true resolution means. And it's not just a single FCR metric, there's so many other variables that go into it. And also realistically explaining what the value realization was, right? And it's not going to start day one at the 86% we achieved, but it's going to be progressive on how they get there and laid it all out. So not only did it blow their minds from what is possible to achieve, but also how grounded in data and reality it was.
Yeah. Amazing. In my white paper, I don't know if we're going to touch on it here, but I mentioned that the market cap on the traditional BPO is somewhere in the billions, but the market cap on the model that you've just shared is over $1 trillion. So that's the opportunity for BPOs that are daring enough, bold enough to try to slowly make that move towards where Movate already is and what you're already able to provide. For some folks, say a BPO executive is watching this, they're going to think, "Oh boy, in that model that was just described, aren't we going to lose revenue? Because typically we're just coming up. Our solution to everything is butts and seats.
Mhm.
And now, obviously it's more complex and takes more thought and time. But how are you compensating? Because your model might even reduce agents. You're bringing in AI. How do you not lose money when you're automating and you're using the model you described?
Yeah. See, we're a little more uniquely positioned than most BPOs in the market, right? We cut our teeth as an engineering organization, and then
Mhm.
from there grew in as an extension of that into a BPO organization. So unlike other BPOs that are trying to masquerade as an engineering organization, either through acquisitions or through partnerships. Our roots stand in engineering. It's still a third of the organization is very deeply entrenched in how we deliver all our services and portfolios, right? And being privately held, candidly, our valuations are much better on the engineering and everything we do from an automation perspective. So inherently, I am built more uniquely to go in and be intentional about cannibalizing BPO headcount, BPO volumes to be able to do more with digital engineering. And I'll also tell you, it's never about if I lower my headcount, if I lower my spend on a line of business or a piece of work with a customer, I have never seen it in the long run work adversely for me. When you are a true partner, there are incremental areas that will constantly be identified by you, and a lot of times even proactively by the customer to say, hey, I know you're not doing this. Why don't you come and take a look at this the same way you looked at that? Because I think you can do wonders there. And it opens up new potential opportunities for both organizations to be able to do the right thing for the end customer.
Right. You're able to do right by the customer while continually growing that business with the client, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah.
And you're able to compensate for the loss on agent count through your other means, through the digital platforms, through AI, through reduced payroll costs, through any number of ways. Am I getting that approximately right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's in line.
Yeah. And so I'm just imagining, customers right now, unless Movate's calling on them, pretty much, they're just getting BPOs wanting to sell them butts and seats. But I'm imagining clients where more frequently the conversation is BPOA is, commodity BPO
Yeah.
selling that. And then a Mobate comes along and says, we want to be your partner. We want to look at how we can help resolve or solve for outcomes.
Right.
Let's look at your data. Let's look at where we can make incremental improvements to your outcomes, potentially even reduce your cost, improve your efficiency,
Yeah.
and in some cases, maybe without even growing BPO headcount, in fact, possibly reducing it. I
Reducing.
mean, it's, if you're going in and saying we're going to reduce the costs per resolution or tied to some other outcome, it's just so different from the other conversation that I can't imagine that anyone's going to choose. No, I think I'm just going to spend more money with more agents and just try to resolve it that way.
Yeah.
Never quite worked the way we wanted in the past, but maybe this time, no, they're gonna choose a Move
Yeah.
when they're approached with this model.
Yeah.
Don't I imagine you agree.
It time. Yeah, absolutely. The number of customers that come to us or when we're having conversations are surprised that they've never heard of such a model, are disappointed that their existing partner didn't bring up something like this proactively, or is willing to look at the business more objectively and in a vested manner, is still astounding. So it does create a lot of great opportunity for a company like Movate.
Yeah, the data is there that clients are now demanding more from their BPOs.
Yeah.
They want their BPO to be able to provide AI and other stuff. It's just the industry is so slow to make any changes. There's thousands and thousands of BPOs that that have not even identified that there's other solutions they need to incorporate to be an MCXP, and that if they don't make these changes down the road, extinction is going to happen because choice one, add more money, throw more agents at the problem. Two, let's look at all the data. Let's look at the outcomes that you're looking to achieve, and then let's solve for those together in a means that's going to improve every aspect of your business, your customer service, and more than likely reduce your overall costs. It's a pretty easy choice. I think everyone's going to be choosing that model. So for commodity BPOs, they're in big trouble if they don't, if they haven't already started
Yeah.
migrating towards being more of a CX transformation provider from what they are. All right, next question. The argument I make in my white paper is that the BPO industry is splitting in two:
Yeah.
commodity providers heading towards irrelevance, and transformation partners capturing all the growth. What's making that split happen right now as opposed to 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think the answer is staring us in the face everywhere we turn, right? The forcing function really is AI, but not necessarily in the way it's always framed. AI isn't just coming in and randomly replacing agents. What it's doing is it's eliminating labor arbitrage as a defensible business model. So, like you said, the BPOs that are still competing on a cost per agent hour are really building on a foundation that's actively dissolving underneath them. And that model will constantly be a race to the bottom. Just think about it. When was the last time you heard an executive say, "Oh, going into this year's budget, I was given more to do more"? Every single conversation is, how do you do more with what you have, or how do you do more with less, is what's most prevalent, right? And just look at what's
Yes.
happening in the market as well.
That's for the US government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Cap Gemini, I'm sure you read as well, right? Just made that $3.3 billion bet on WNS. That's not an acquisition just from a scale standpoint, right? Because it is a survival mode. It is a signal that the traditional BPO capabilities are no longer enough, and that the market is consolidating fast, quickly around AI capable, outcome oriented platforms. That kind of move doesn't happen unless the pressure is existential, right? And you know this, you speak to enough people in the industry. The pie of the traditional BPO services is shrinking rapidly. Low
Hmm.
complexity, high volume transactional work is shifting to AI agents and autonomous workflows. That's not coming back. What's growing dramatically is the layer above it, right? The AI data foundations, intelligent either business processes as a service, or like you call it, the managed CX provider models, the high value human plus digital operations. And
Yeah.
5 years ago, right, if you think about it, convincing a customer that an outcome based model was the way to go was so much more tedious. The baselines were harder to measure, the discovery was more manual, and true improvements a lot of times were difficult to quantify to them. Today, the AI market and the AI providers do much of that selling on the outcomes for us. Customers now already come in understanding that 40, 50, 60% autonomous resolution is real, is attainable. There's use cases around it. And I can confidently build the models for them because the analytics exists, the infrastructure exists, the AI solutions exist, and client expectations demand it. You talked about stats that support this, um, from back in the day when automation was part of 10%, 20% of any kind of requirement, things limited to foundational automation. About 70% plus of everything that comes to us from an RFP perspective demands a AI based solution, would like to understand how you take AI, how you integrate it into what their core business is, and how can you make their business better for them. So just the technology's caught up with the commercial models that we've always wanted to offer, and AI is accelerating all of it. Changes are happening daily, weekly, versus over months and years.
Yeah. I mean, less than 5 years ago. I mean, when did
Yeah,
OpenAI really launch ChatGPT? Was that 3 years ago now?
a couple of years ago, yes, maybe.
Prior to that, I
Yeah,
remember we would help clients. We would help clients with procuring AI, and I remember a time when we were trying to help them go from using Salesforce and Zendesk's AI to try to help them move from resolving 5% of customer care interactions to 10%.
Yeah.
And then, as conversational AI platforms got better, yeah, I was helping them move from 10% to 20%.
Right.
And then since ChatGPT and since agentic AI, it's now at a point where regularly we're seeing clients in the 60 to 80% range of interactions being resolved.
Mhm.
And it's not uncommon for some of our suppliers like Yellow or Core or others, where they'll have a credit union at 96% or a retailer at 93%.
Mhm.
That's not uncommon. So in less than 5 years, we went from 5 to 10% to 80% roughly. So if we keep evolving at that same rate, and I don't see any reason why we won't, that means for a BPO, less and less opportunity to be selling agents,
Yeah.
more opportunity to be selling a more encompassing solution that integrates AI. And the numbers speak for themselves. Anyone that doesn't see this and isn't making a shift, any BPO, oh, God help them. All right. Um, Next, so outcome-based contracts sound better for buyers,
Yeah.
but they put real skin in the game
Mm.
for the BPO. What happens when the outcomes don't materialize? How should a buyer think about what accountability actually looks like in one of these agreements?
Yeah. Another great question. See, the honest answer is that outcome based models or contracts only work when both parties come to the table in full transparency. So, the first thing to do is make the discovery phase a completely open book exercise. We share our assumptions, they share their data, we agree on what the baseline is together before we get into any kind of commercial terms or written contractual terms, right? We actually use AI in that discovery phase to analyze historical interaction data, map contact drivers, model deflection potential, and build a shared view of what's achievable and, more importantly, over what timeline. We call that progressive value realization, just so everybody understands that AI isn't a magic wand that starts at 100% from day one as soon as you wave it over your contact center operations, right? So all of this removes a lot of the subjectivity from the conversation and paints a very realistic picture of what is achievable, by when it's achievable, based on the baseline start state that we identify and what the intended state they want to go to. So there's no subjectivity, there's no ambiguity, just clear, transparent alignment. I will say another thing, that accountability in all of these needs to be a two-way street, right? The client has obligations too in the initial fact-finding stage, due diligence stage, but also around data access, system integration, responsiveness to change management. All of that they need to be co-invested in as well. And we're pretty explicit about that upfront, because if we can't get the data we need, we won't start the engagement in an outcome-based structure. We'll evolve into it. And that's not a negotiating position. It's just intellectual honesty based on
Mhm.
experience about what makes these models work. I read a Forrester report on SLA evolution, and they made a point there that I deeply agree with, right? The best
Mm.
partnerships move away from penalty heavy contracts toward gain share models where the vendor is incentivized to over deliver. And that's the relationships we're trying to build. Not a vendor you manage, but a partner with an equal stake in your outcomes and vice versa.
That's amazing. So, really, as long as you're able to work with a client that has integrity, that's open, that's honest, and that really is transparent with you. So, if they're not fully transparent, they give you incorrect data. They don't give you access to everything that your AI would typically analyze. Um, Basically, if something were not to work out here, it's probably the data that you're being given to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the foundation, right? When the foundation is shaky or there's there's inconsistencies in it, anything you construct on top of it is going to end up collapsing at some point.
They see you as someone that's not, sometimes people are afraid to share data because, oh, they're going to uncover different ways to sell me things.
Yeah.
But it's not in this capacity. They're giving you opportunity to look for outcomes that you can resolve in ways that can improve their efficiency or reduce their costs, or any number of things. So it's different. They have a motivation to give you all of their data and to be completely to open their kimono, give you everything you need, because the better they do that, the more you can accomplish with them as a partner.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny story, but I had a customer once tell me, prospect, they're not a customer of ours, but tell me once that they don't want to look at interaction analytics across all their contact types because their call center is already solving too many problems. And they're worried about the other problems that the interaction analytics will uncover, which you see how it's very structurally at the base flawed in how you're looking at solving your customer experience problem. So those are the types of things where you take a step back and say maybe outcome-based model is not the right path for you.
Yeah. Also, with all of this information that the client is sharing with you, it really opens the door for you to identify and understand, identify, and share with the client their their TCO, their ROI, where they're going to see improvements and where they're going to and essentially how your services are going to pay for themselves
Right.
more often than not
Yeah.
through these different ways.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can be more eloquent in describing that, but you have a unique capacity in what you've built to be able to properly share with the client what their savings, what their improvements will be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that progressive value realization that I showed you. So all of that gets boiled down to what the brass tacks mean from a dollar value perspective, right? Because it's not just an investment, and you've got to think of ROI holistically. It's not just an investment in monetary funding. It is time, energy, effort for both parties to go in and invest in it. So we are able to, and will always 100% of the time, articulate what that TCO reduction looks like, what the ROI is on the spend. And I have not come across a situation where we've had the right use cases and the right baseline data where investments in AI wasn't 100% self-funding and the ROI was on top of it, right? So the models built correctly will always fund themselves over time and then a few times over from an ROI and a TCO reduction perspective.
That is so important. I hope everybody, rewind a little bit and listen to that again, because that is mind blowing. I love this. I love what you're doing. I mean, I've written a white paper that hopefully we'll be able to have a link if we're going to have the landing page up that features the white paper at some point, at the end of this podcast. If not, people can reach out to me to request it. We'll be marketing the white paper here pretty soon. But you have built, the white paper I did not build around Movate. I spent a lot. I took a couple of years doing research into what BPOs are needing to evolve into. And it just so happens that everything that I've come up with my data is in perfect alignment with what Movate has built and created.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I was really, really pleasantly surprised to see that point of view, Darren, because like you said, it does absolutely 100% align how we conduct business and how we encourage our customers to conduct business with us.
Yeah. So my last question, I think we've kind of covered. It was that you've been in the industry 23 years. You've watched an outsourcing engagement fail, and what's usually the thing that killed it?
Yeah, I think we touched upon it briefly, right? But if I have to spell it out, the single biggest killer is when a client or their leadership outsources the function to a vendor, but doesn't let go of the accountability. The moment a client signs and then just mentally checks out, that engagement is on borrowed time, right? Outsourcing is not a handoff. While I do encourage people to transfer ownership and accountability to a partner, it is just that it's a partnership. that requires active participation from both sides to make it successful. And if we've got the time, I'll tell you a quick story, right? Because
Love it.
it's a lot about trust. Uh, because we were brought in by a company who's with one of the largest BPOs in the world, wasn't getting what they needed from an innovation standpoint, wasn't really getting progressive thought models, and we went in to do the same thing, right? A full scale AI transformation built on top of outcomes, right? And we dug in, did the same thing. They absolutely love the model. They see value in the TCO reduction and the analysis that we had done, so on and so forth. And we got years and years of interaction data from their previous BPO. We analyzed all of it, created the baseline, did all of what we do from a typical outcome-based solution perspective, only to realize that that foundation on data was shaky. The customer wasn't confident. As we dug through, there were several anomalies that the customer couldn't explain, the existing partner couldn't explain to the customer. And so we weren't able to pinpoint across certain things why certain things were happening a certain way in at different points in that customer's evolution, right? Either way, we just stepped back. We worked out something a lot simpler, and
Mhm.
we told them it's in both our best interests to run operations for a few quarters, build a clean, verified baseline, and then move to an outcome-based contract on top of that solid data foundation. And the conversation, and we'd been engaged with them for about a year at that point. The conversation to slow down is never easy, and especially since the pressure to transform from their organization came from the top down and was absolutely immense. But I think a partner who can do that when it is the right call is worth more than one who just says anything or sign anything to close an opportunity, right? Towards the end, right before signing, their CEO appreciated our transparency and the approach we recommended to take the step back. It wasn't easy for either of us, but it was absolutely the right thing to do. And the full transformation is back on the table now. We have clean, verifiable baseline data, and it actually, and the transformation will 100% succeed because we took that step. So 23 years in, that's the pattern I keep seeing, right? The engagements that win long term are the ones built on honesty and transparency from day one, and where both parties are vested in the outcomes and are driving towards mutual success.
That's amazing. Love it. Well, hopefully CX leaders will finish this episode with a clear picture of why the traditional BPO model is structurally misaligned with what clients actually need, what a genuine outcome based engagement looks like in practice, and what to demand from any vendor claiming to have made the shift. So, a couple other points I'll mention my white paper. Uh, really published for BPOs or about to be published, written for BPOs, transform or become extinct. Why BPOs must evolve into managed CX solutions providers. So we're going to make that available soon, if possible. If it's ready in time, I'll have the link at the end of the podcast here so people can go to the page and learn more about the white paper and download it. Also, I want to mention that Cloud Tech Gurus is we're both a CX transformation consulting provider using real practitioners, real folks that ran contact centers for airlines and banks and that started their own consulting companies. And we make real practitioners available to our clients for a fraction of what the big consulting companies charge. But more importantly, we also are constantly, we've spent 4,000 hours evaluating vendors. We spend 50 hours a month evaluating new ones. So the vendor intelligence we've gathered is pretty amazing. And we are a TSD, Technology Solutions Distributor, with over 220 partners. Movate is one of our partners, both for AI, for outsourcing. We'll probably change our BPO category in our portfolio to MCXP And I guess right now it would just be Movate in that category. But if anyone wants to dig deeper into what we've talked about here, or learn more about Movate, or meet with Sid and his team, Cloud Tech Gurus is a Movate partner, and we would love to help get that meeting scheduled. So I'll include our contact information, and we're happy to help you in getting an introduction where you can delve a little deeper with Sid on your desired outcomes and how they can help. So, Sid, this is amazing. I think this is a podcast people will want to watch or listen to a couple of times. There's so much to learn, and again, I haven't been able. I can't think of anything that has the potential to impact companies in the manner of what we've just described, with an MCXP like Movate coming in and being able to solve for, as a partner, for outcomes, resolving, helping improve resolutions, and really creating an alignment between what you're providing to the client and what their desired outcomes are, and where they want to go and who they want to be, and ultimately radically improve their customer service and experience. So I appreciate your time. Maybe at some point I'll have you back. We can dig a little deeper, do a part 2. But for now, awesome job. And I learned a lot and just loved the model. I love the model and the customer case study you shared, and hope to have you back in the future.
Happy to come back, Darren. Great conversation. Very engaging questions. Thank you.